Hello everyone, my name is Ava Perkins and I am a cosmetic chemist, PhD student, and science communicator, and today we're going to be talking about formulation design. But before I get into it, thank you so much to Jen for inviting me to speak at this e-summit. It is truly an honor to be here. A little bit about me, I have a bachelor's degree in cosmetic science and formulation design from the University of Toledo, and I'm currently pursuing a PhD in biomembrane sciences at the University of Cincinnati. So formulation design is a topic that I think about almost constantly and really enjoy speaking about. But what is formulation design, and why is it so important? Formulation design is a process that blends science and art together to create products that meet consumer expectations while also adhering to safety and quality standards. It's an area of the cosmetic industry that really blends technicalities and creativity together, and formulators need to have knowledge in areas even outside of science. Chemistry is important because you need to know or at least predict how ingredients are going to interact with each other, and biology is important because you need to understand the surface you're applying products to. Having adequate knowledge in these areas is a must as a formulator. Knowing the other three though, regulatory, art, and marketing, is definitely not mandatory, but it for sure helps. Let me explain. Understanding the legal framework set by regulatory bodies is important because they set limitations on ingredients. Banning an ingredient altogether or limiting the amount that you can use affects how you formulate a product. Art is also really important for the product's overall aesthetics. Whether it's the color or the texture, these factors play a huge role in a consumer's purchasing decision. And finally, keeping up with marketing trends gives you an idea of the product types or ingredients that are popular and will kind of let you know what you're getting yourself into. I just mentioned product types. Now, what do I mean by that? This is the final form of a product. In the world of pharmaceutical sciences, which is what my background is in, we refer to them as dosage forms, but product types and dosage forms are used pretty interchangeably. But I do bring some pharmaceutical terminology into this because there are a gazillion products out on the market, which is a super scientific number, by the way, and there's a lot of creative marketing out there too. But out of all the products on the market, they all fall under three different categories: liquids, semi-solids, and solids. But before I go any further, I just wanted to give a quick disclaimer that I am not getting paid to show any of the products that I have in this presentation, and I'm not necessarily recommending them either. But these were selected because they possess qualities that are best fit for their product type. I also want to preface that not every example is going to be skincare, and that's because sometimes skincare is not the appropriate application, and I will be sure to explain why. But anyway, starting with liquids, we have solutions, lotions, and suspensions, and we will dive deeper into their general composition. Solutions are homogeneous mixtures, meaning they only have one phase. This could be water-based, hydroalcoholic, or anhydrous, aka only oils. Water-based solutions contain obviously water and water-soluble ingredients, and a few examples of these would be hand soaps and some makeup removers. This specific formulation type is used in a lot of cleansing applications because it is easy to make and can easily wash off. Hydroalcoholic solutions are not very common in a typical skincare routine because alcohols are astringents, meaning they can strip away moisture. But in this product type, you would have obviously water and alcohol and ingredients that are soluble within those, and you would most likely find them in facial toners, but nowadays consumers prefer alcohol-free ones. Where you would find these solutions though would be in mouthwashes or in sunless tanning products. Anhydrous solutions contain mainly emollients and are frequently incorporated into a skincare routine because they are very moisturizing, and they can also penetrate the skin pretty well. Next we have lotions, which are thin emulsions that are not too greasy, easily pourable, and also easily washable. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with what an emulsion is, it's essentially two immiscible phases brought together by an emulsifier. Emulsifiers are unique ingredients in that they possess both water and oil-loving properties, and this allows two phases that don't normally work with each other to come together. Now, under the microscope though, these are still not homogeneous mixtures. Emulsifiers create little pockets called micelles, and this allows one phase to be entrapped within the other. So chemically, they're not really that thermodynamically stable, but a regular consumer would have no idea just by looking at the label. There are several ways these phases can be configured. You have water and oil and water, and water and silicone. And what determines the system is the type of emulsifier that you use. Now, there is no set rule that this emulsion type has to be a lotion, but it's typically oil and water emulsions. And that's because they are easier to wash off and less greasy. So if your skin is on the oilier side, or if it's humid outside, lotions would be a good fit for you. Now, suspensions are liquids with insoluble solid particles that are hopefully evenly dispersed. And similar to solutions, they can be water-based, hydroalcoholic, or anhydrous. But as you can see, the examples that I have here are not super related to skincare. And that's because the insoluble particles that are being dispersed are typically pigments. There can be pigments such as zinc oxide in a sunscreen, which is skincare, but those are not really made in a single phase liquid formulation. It would typically be formulated as a lotion. This just goes to show that these categories are more of a guidance rather than a set rule, because there can be quite a bit of overlap. But anyway, the product that would be most applicable to skincare would be spray antiperspirants. These have a mix of oils, silicones, and propellants to deliver the aluminum salts. In the next category, we have semi-solids. And in the semi-solids category, we have 4 subcategories, which are creams, ointments, pastes, and gels. Creams are very similar to lotions in that they are emulsions, just thicker. While lotions can flow pretty readily, creams don't and are stiffer. This is because they contain a higher amount of oils and waxes, which makes it better for moisturization, but in turn can also make the formulation greasier. Creams are better for those with dry skin, ideal to be used in the winter, and also at night. Like I said, there is no rulebook as to what is a lotion or a cream. There is a lot of free reign in marketing. I've used lotions that should probably be called creams, and vice versa. Now we're definitely starting to increase our oil phase concentration here. Ointments are formulations that contain less than 20% of water and are very heavy in oils and waxes. They can be completely anhydrous like Vaseline, which is 100% petrolatum, but they can also contain a little bit of water too. Ointments are great if you're looking for occlusion. They're typically used by consumers to seal in their skincare at night or for severely dry and cracked skin. Here I'm trying to depict the overall difference in the aesthetics of lotions versus creams versus ointments. Like we've learned, lotions are generally thinner, creams thicker, and ointments even more so and are generally very greasy. What about pastes? Pastes are almost a blend of suspensions and ointments in that they have those dispersed solids and are also very thick and greasy. With ointments there is some flexibility of putting water in it, but with pastes there isn't. Pastes are not very popular in skincare because there are very few times we as consumers need something that is greasy with solids in it, but the most common commercial product would be diaper rash paste. The solid particles in here are zinc oxide, which is a skin protectant, and this helps to prevent some pretty angry looking baby skin. And another example I'm seeing more and more frequently on social media is DIY mineral sunscreens. These essentially blend together butters and zinc oxide you can just get from the store or on Amazon. I think for very obvious reasons this is an absolute no-go, but if you have questions about why, please feel free to email me. Lastly, we have gels, which contain a gelling agent to provide stiffness to either a solution or an emulsion. Some common basic gelling agents are carbomer and xanthan gum, and you may notice that anhydrous is not an option on this one. The product needs to have water to work, but you can find very basic gels in the form of cleansers, post-shave products, cooling gels, and hand sanitizers. And these are good for very surface level applications. I would not expect gels on their own to penetrate the skin very well. And in the final category, we have solids. Now, I'm not going to go through and break down this category in the same way that I did for liquids and semi-solids because there are very few applications related to skincare. Loose and pressed powders are most applicable to color cosmetics. Capsules are a rare find in the industry, but in general have an outer shell made of gelatin and some oil-soluble ingredients on the inside. And sticks are most definitely skincare. These are anhydrous formulations that contain a higher amount of waxes to give it structure and have oils for some moisturization. However, in my opinion, sticks are not necessarily preferred in skincare besides for the lips because they are generally pretty greasy. Now, let's talk skin. It's really important to understand the surface you're applying all of these products to, and why some dosage forms would be a better fit to address specific skin concerns over others. The skin is a very complex organ that's job is to keep the external environment out and to keep all of our organs in. It's your body's ultimate bodyguard. It's incredibly resilient, especially if we take care of it. And this is a good thing, right? We can jump into the pool and not have to worry about turning into a blown up pufferfish because we don't absorb things like a sponge. But this isn't completely ideal for formulators because we have to really think about the products that we make if we want to address specific skin concerns. Although it does keep us in a job. The skin contains several layers, including the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis, and these all contain various cell types and have different skin appendages. Let's start with the epidermis. The epidermis can be broken down into 5 different layers which contain various cell types. But the cells that I want to point out here in the viable epidermis, meaning the layers under the stratum corneum, are keratinocytes and melanocytes. Keratinocytes make up a majority of the epidermis, about 90%, and they originate at the basal layer, aka the bottom layer. As they make their way up to the top layers of the skin, they thin out, and your skin overall becomes more hydrophobic. Melanocytes are the cells that produce melanin, which is the pigment responsible for your skin's color, and these are located at the basal layer as well. This is also what's associated with hyperpigmentation, meaning if you want to address this skin concern, you need to go into the deeper layers of the epidermis. But zooming in a little bit, we have the stratum corneum, which is the very top layer of the epidermis and is what every product will interact with. The stratum corneum is infamously known to possess a brick and mortar model, where the bricks are tightly packed corneocytes enclosed by a cell envelope, and the mortar is the lipid matrix the corneocytes sit in. This lipid matrix makes the skin very hydrophobic. But zooming back out and down to the deeper layers of the skin, we have the dermis. In the dermis, we have a lot of skin appendages, including hair follicles, sweat glands, but this is also where collagen and elastin are located. Especially recently, there have been a lot of claims that state that a product is going to boost collagen production or increase firmness in the skin, and that implies the product is reaching down to the dermis. We'll cover permeation pathways a little bit later, but this can be very challenging. Why is it so challenging? Well, as we learned, your skin is a very complex organ and we don't soak things up like a sponge. Every product you use doesn't automatically reach your bloodstream. I don't think any of us would be here if that were the case. Number 2, the superficial layers of your skin are very hydrophobic and become more hydrophilic as you go deeper. By nature, there are very few cosmetic ingredients that possess those qualities, which again supports the point that not every product is going to penetrate the skin in the same way. Products that are water-based or have higher concentrations of water are not going to penetrate the skin very well, while products that are oil-based or have high concentrations of oil in it could penetrate the superficial layers of your skin well, but may not go much further than that. Lastly, cosmetic actives are not all the same. There are water-soluble ones, there are oil-soluble ones, some need to go deeper into the skin to truly target a specific skin concern. You can't just throw all these actives into the same product type and expect it to work the same way. Anissa will cover more of this in her presentation, make sure to stay tuned for that. So what happens if your active is not optimal for skin penetration? What are some things that you can do? Before we get into delivery systems, we need to chat about permeation pathways. We're just going to ignore mechanical delivery methods because not everyone can or should compromise their stratum corneum to optimize product delivery, but we will focus on the other 3. Products partition along 3 main pathways, which are the intracellular, intercellular, and transfollicular pathways. In the intracellular pathway, the product will go through every portion of the brick and mortar model, meaning it will go through the corneocytes and the lipid matrix. This means it will have to go through the lipid matrix, which is lipophilic, penetrate the corneocyte's envelope, and pass through the corneocyte, which is hydrophilic, and then go back out of the cell. That's a nightmare. In the intercellular pathway, products will exclusively pass through the lipid matrix. So they're really not rocking with the corneocytes on this one. This pathway can be challenging because it's not straightforward. They have to move around all of the corneocytes. Lastly, we have the transfollicular pathway, where the product will penetrate the skin via the skin appendages. This pathway is of special interest in drug delivery research right now, but is a challenge because your skin is not made up of 100% of hair. Products are more likely to go through the previous 2 pathways than the transfollicular one. Unless you have a lot of time on your hands and are purposely putting on your products around all of your hair follicles, which I mean, how do you even see that? All 3 pathways will happen or will attempt to happen at the same time. To optimize skin penetration, increase stability, and or control the release of an ingredient, delivery systems can be used including emulsion, vesicular, and particulate systems, as well as lipid nanoparticles. I won't go too far into detail about these systems, but just wanted to bring awareness to the various methods you can use to deliver actives. First, we have emulsion systems. We previously went over the composition of them, so I'm not going to cover that here, but they are great because they possess the same qualities that your skin does with the lipophilic and hydrophilic properties. You can formulate them in various sizes, including the micro, nano, and macro size. And some examples of ingredients I found in literature that use these systems include UV filters, anti-aging ingredients like adapalene or retinol, peptides, essential oils, and various extracts. Now, for the remainder of this presentation, I'll be talking about some systems that are just generally referred to as encapsulation systems. Here we have vesicular systems, which contain liposomes, transfersomes, ethosomes, and niosomes. They're all very similar in structure in that they have this outer shell. Most contain phospholipids, but there are other things that are added in there as well. For a conventional liposome, it is just phospholipids. Ethosomes have phospholipids, but also ethanol in it. Transfersomes have phospholipids, but with edge activators in them, which are typically surfactants. And niosomes contain just non-ionic surfactants. Within the shell is our active of choice. In this case, it is water-soluble. Some examples would be vitamin C, retinaldehyde, niacinamide, things like that. Next, there are particulate systems, which are very similar in nature to vesicular ones, except they have a little bit of a different makeup. With micro or nanospheres, there is a dispersion of the active in a polymeric system, and with micro or nanocapsules, there is a distinct difference between the wall and the core material. Some examples of actives I've seen being used are retinol, fragrance, some antioxidants, and caffeine. Phew! Okay, last slide, people. Here we have lipid nanoparticles. Solid lipid nanoparticles were the first generation of these, followed by nanostructured lipid carriers. SLNs are composed of a solid lipid, surfactant, and the active, while NLCs are composed of the solid and liquid lipids, surfactant, and the active. SLNs show both burst and sustained release, but possess not a great loading capacity, while the new generation has a higher loading capacity and a better sustained release. Some actives I found using the system are kojic acid, vitamin E, and some seed oils. Okay, so depending on your background, this might have been a little bit overwhelming, and that's okay. The overall takeaways I want to leave you with is that dosage forms are chosen and formulated very intentionally, the skin is a complex organ, and that there are options to optimize delivery. In my opinion, formulation design is a really cool part of the industry because it's like a puzzle. It can get more challenging depending on the nature of the market, or easier with innovative ingredients and research. Thank you so much for listening. I had so much fun. I really hope that you learned something. If you want to reach me, please feel free to email me or send me a message on my social media platforms. Enjoy the rest of the summit.